Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangumlam Jayate Girim Yakripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinitarino Vanchakalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhavevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vairagya Vijjini Jabhakti Yoga Shikshashtamita Purusha Purana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Saridare Kripam Bhuri Yashnamaham Prabhaje. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has descended in the form of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service, and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto him. Ananda Leelamaya Vigrahaya Himambidivyachchaivi Sundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasapadaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste. Obeisances unto him, Sri Chaitanya Chandra, the giver of the mellow of the highest love of Godhead, who is the embodiment of blissful pastimes, and who is so beautiful, having a dazzling luster, just like gold. The following prayers here, 4 prayers, are from the Chaitanya Nama Shotram. Lord Chaitanya has a fair complexion. He is full of spiritual bliss. He is Lord Krishna himself, Krishna, who manifests in the form of Chaitanya. He resides in Navadwip. He is Jagannath Mishra's son. He is the most perfect and complete Lord. He is the Supreme Brahman, manifested in the form of a sannyasi. That's an interesting name for Mahaprabhu, Sannyasi Rupadarka. Now, I guess if you were given that name at the initiation, your destiny would be pretty much charted out. He is the maintainer of all the worlds. He is the friend of the poor. He gives the gift of Lord Hari's holy names. A person who only once recites these 12 names of Mahaprabhu attains mercy by the grace of Mahaprabhu, ecstatic spiritual love, and devotion to the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Lord, whose form is effulgent like gold. His limbs are fair. He is Sachi's son, and within his heart he is the dark Lord Krishna himself. Nityananda himself also gives a very nice prayer glorifying Gauranga. Lord Nityananda employed, serve Lord Gauranga, sing the holy name of Lord Gauranga, chant the holy name of Lord Gauranga. Those who worship Lord Gauranga in this way are my own life and soul. And even our own Sri Narada Muni, who manifested Srivas, as Srivas, he has a wonderful prayer here. If someone endeavors to worship Krishna without regularly chanting the name of Lord Gauranga, then he or she will achieve Krishna only after a very prolonged period of time. But, we always love those caveats from the acharyas, but if someone takes, my father used to say, you can have the car on Saturday night, but he knew it wasn't going to be a good caveat. Narada Muni is much more merciful. But if someone takes shelter of the name of Lord Gauranga, he or she will achieve Krishna very soon, because his offenses will immediately cease to exist. Lochandas Thakur also. The Lord sits on a golden bejeweled throne. He possesses a complexion millions of times more brilliant than the color of molten gold itself. He is worshipped by all his devotees by the chanting of the 4-syllable mantra Raj, Gauranga. Gauranga, mantra Raj. I'm not going to try and figure that one out. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Gauranga. Thank you. Narottam Das Thakur, our concluding Acharya here. 2 pages on that. One may reside in the house, or one may reside in the forest, but if one constantly chants the name of Gauranga, then I, Narottam Das, want that person's association and want to serve that person. I don't know if we want that, Narottam serving us, but that's his mood. So we can at least embrace that mood. And finally, Prabhu Bananda Saraswati Thakur gives a very, very wonderful statement here. Why are you lamenting? Has the name of Lord Gauranga not entered into your ears? So are we going to go through this day and our lives actually lamenting that we have not had the name of Gauranga in our ears, in our mind, in our entire consciousness? So may I please get a loud Gauranga. Gauranga! Gauranga! I heard a little louder kirtan last night. Gauranga! Gauranga! No lamentation. Very nice. So, before I start, I want to thank Batu Gopal for this very insightful class yesterday. Some of us of a certain age will remember that particular chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila Volume 7, was produced in a small paperback book, Lord Caitanya in 5 features. And it had Lord Caitanya sitting amongst the shoes of Prakasananda Saraswati's ashram. And we used to distribute that profusely out in the streets. I have no idea what people thought when they got it, what they read. Some of those people may be sitting right here. But that was a time at which that was a very, very well-known and popular book that was studied, read, and distributed, and brought back very nice memories speaking on that particular chapter. So thank you so much, Prabhu. So to speak or be asked to speak on the Supreme Avatar is no small task. I'm reminded of a quote from Sanatana Goswami, to be like a dwarf trying to capture the moon. Of course, I guess he would have to say now to be one who is challenged by height, everything's changed so much. But at any rate, Sanatana Goswami makes this analogy that how is it possible for anyone, what to speak of a dwarf, to capture the moon? They cannot reach that far. So this is an expression of Sanatana Goswami's humility that one has a task in front of him that can't be accomplished. So to speak on the Yuga Avatar, to speak about the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, Tri Yuga Avatar, we call him, there's some particular things to note. There are a fair number of scholars, academics, students of the Vedas that do not accept Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as an incarnation. I mean, to us, that's just like, what? How is that possible? Because our entire movement, our entire way of life is based upon Mahaprabhu being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, incarnate in the Kali Yuga. But we find in an ancient text called the Chaitanya Upanishad, Pipala Muni is speaking to Lord Brahma. He's speaking, this is the conversation between the two of them. And Brahma instructs Pipalada. He says, "Oh, hey, Pipalada, becoming pure in mind. Again, I say to you, in the age of Kali Yuga, people are covered in sin. Do you know how they will obtain liberation? I will tell you of the form of the deity and the mantra to be worshipped in the Kali Yuga." Lord Brahma continues, "I will speak to you this confidential truth. On the bank of the Janavi, in Navadwip Dham, which is known as Goloka, Govinda with 2 arms, a golden complexion, the super soul, the greatest personality, the greatest yogi, the supreme being, who is transcendental to the modes of nature and whose form is truth, will appear to manifest devotional service, bhakti, for this entire world. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in a variety of transcendental forms, is also known as Gaura. He has appeared in various complexions, such as reddish, blackish, and whitish, and he shall also appear in the form of Gaura. He himself is Caitanya, the embodiment of Shakti. He shall appear in the form of a devotee to bestow devotional service to the Lord, and he shall be known by that devotional service. By knowing him, who is to be known by all the Vedas, who is the oldest personality, who is himself Caitanya, the source of the universe, and the greatest, one can overcome death. There is no other means for going beyond Maya except the mercy of Lord Caitanya. That's a great tattoo. There's no other means to overcome Maya, or a t-shirt, that way everybody can wear it. Anyone who develops love for Lord Caitanya, worships him, or meditates on him, is freed from all sin, becomes purified, understands the supreme truth, and overcomes lamentation. Same thing Prabhupada Saraswati was just saying. For him, there is no other destination except the lotus feet of Gaura. So, very clearly we can understand there is no doubt as to the supremacy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yet, unlike other incarnations, he is not openly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We all know the pastimes that when the devotees would address him as such, he would cover his ears. No, Vishnu, 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 Vishnu. Actually, I think it's like this, right? Covered opposite like that. So this is because he appeared as a covered incarnation. He kept his supremacy out of sight, not knowledge, not visible. And we can try and understand him as the Supreme Lord of the Vaikuntha, the Supreme Enjoyer. But understanding him in that mood would cloud the purpose of his appearance, the purpose of his service and appearing in that way. It's interesting, he did not appear out of duty, out of obligation to fulfill some particular kind of mission, but solely out of the desire to taste his own pleasure of devotional service to himself. That's a very amazing statement. Mahaprabhu wanted to understand, how is it that I'm so loved? And he equally wanted to show himself as an example of how to render devotional service. I mean, those two things combined are pretty amazing when you look at it. So the covered nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead was especially true, especially prominent in the early Navadwip Lilas. We're all familiar with all these pastimes of his mischievous nature and his naughtiness when he was a little child. But as Nimai Pandit grows into adolescence and a young man, he's still keeping his identity covered. Maybe a little hint here or there. But this covered identity gives an even deeper sweetness to the pastimes. So I thought I would focus today on this particular period of Mahaprabhu's pastimes as Nimai Pandit in Navadwip. Now, during this time, he had established a school, and he had many, many students. He was a very, very popular teacher, and many people wanted to be in his association and under his teachings. After the 11th year of his age, he became accepted as a scholar, 11 years old. I can't even imagine what most of us were doing at the age of 11. Some of you were Vaishnavas, thank you, Prabhu. But he was expert in grammar and rhetoric and Nyaya and Smriti, all of these different fields. Now, keep in mind, during this time, his elder brother Vishwarupa had left and become a sannyasi. And Nimai consoled his parents and acknowledged to them, I will stay here and serve you, don't worry, no concerns. And then shortly after that period of time, Nimai's father, Jagannath Mishra, departed from this world. Sachimata, who can imagine her sorrow? Her eldest son, the eldest son in the family is a very big deal. Her eldest son, and I'm not just saying that because I'm the eldest son, the eldest son in the family, and her husband, both departing. So she's constantly filled with sorrow. So Nimai Pandit agreed to stay and console his mother, look after her and encourage her. And she, in turn, wanted to be sure to secure his future, and she arranged for his marriage to Lakshmi Devi. Lakshmi Devi, of course, was a daughter of Ballabhacharya, who was also from Nadia. There had been some family exchanges on the banks of the Ganga, the daughter noticing Nimai and the mother and the daughter talking, and then the two mothers talking, and how these things go on like that. That's all a pattern from the story. It was at this age that he was considered not only to be a teacher of great respect, but he was about 14 by this point. He was considered to be one of the greatest scholars in all of Nadia. And Nadia, as you well know, was a seat of learning, of logic, of education, of Shastra. This was the place everyone went to. If you were in Bengal and you wanted to really perfect your studies, you went to Nadia and you studied there with all the great Pandits, of which Nimai Pandit was the... And not only Vaishnavas, but all the Smartas, all the Nayaks, they all came and they studied there. And they would all regularly have discussions and conversations with Nimai Pandit, and he would defeat them all. There was one, Mukunda. Mukunda was an associate of Advaita Acharya, and being an associate of Advaita Acharya, that meant he had some link there with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mukunda was a little bit older, a couple of 3 years, something like that. He had no real interest in all this dry logic that Nimai Pandit would argue with. Nimai Pandit hadn't come up as a devotee at this point. The personality of God had established in the path of bhakti. So Mukunda had, not this Nimai Pandit. And Prabhu and the students saw it. Mukunda saw Mahaprabhu and the students. Mukunda very quickly took, here's another path, let me go. No interest in wasting his time. He considered it a waste of time, this dry debating that Nimai Pandit would do. Some of you who've been out on the street preaching, you may have had some experience where some Christian or some other philosophy, wants to take up your time, But, no interest here. Take a book and leave me alone. So on this day, Mukunda had gone. Nimai Pandit turned to his most senior student, and he said, "Did you see Mukunda? Why did he turn away like that?" And the student, not knowing the exact reason, he said, he must have some important business in another direction. He just turned to go take care of that. Nimai Pandit said, no, he is avoiding me. The student said, but Nimai Pandit, why would he avoid you? He thinks I'm just a dry grammatical teacher and debater, and he doesn't want to waste any of his time with me. But you watch and see. One day, he will come to one day, he will see all the demigods come to my door and worship my lotus feet, and then he will understand. Nimai smiled like this. Now, indeed, Mukunda would think like that. This Nimai Pandit is such an intelligent person. He's so charming. He's so attractive. He has so many followers. If he would just become a Vaishnava, then the mission of the Vaishnava teachings would be spread everywhere. If this could just happen. So Mukunda was thinking like this, How is it possible to think like? Because, as we mentioned, Mahaprabhu has not revealed himself yet as the personality of Godhead. So one day in the afternoon, Lakshmi Devi had made very nice prasadam and served Nimai. Nimai took a little nap. It's authorized. After lunch, you take a little nap. And sometimes you have to take a nap depending on how amazing the prasadam is. So Nimai Pandit, he woke from his nap, he refreshed himself, he called some of his students, let's go out for a walk in Nadia. So Vrindavan Das Thakur gives a very, very nice description of this. He said it was such a beautiful sight to behold. Nimai Pandit walked with the proud gait of an elephant. Some of you may have seen the elephants in Mayapur when they're on that procession, you know. They're like, we're elephants, you know. So this was the kind of stance Nimai was walking, surrounded by all of his students. He was dressed in the finest of silk garments, decorated with multiple garlands and various jewels and bangles. And so, being a married man, this wasn't uncommon, because the principle was, if you were a scholar, if you were a teacher, when your students came, they would give you offerings. This is mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion, how when one goes to the temple, one should take something. One should never go to the temple empty-handed. There's one devotee that, he's passed away now. He lived in Alachua, and every day when he came to the temple, and he came to the temple every day for Guru Puja, he would bring a flower, put it before the deities. Every day, from his own garden that he had grown with his own hands. So this is the idea. So, you know, they were giving him, and he had quite a bit of wealth. Plus, when you would debate an opponent, and that opponent was, you know, defeated, they now had to give tribute to you. This was the system. So it was not out of his means to have such fabulous wealth, and, you know, he was not poor by any means, let's just say that. So as Nimai Pandit is going through Navadwip, everyone that saw him was so pleased by his sight, by his appearance, how beautiful and effulgent and just charming to look upon, and the hearts would melt, and it was just so incredible. It mentions that many of the elevated demigods struggled to come to positions where they could view Nimai going through the town of Navadwip. No one could understand in reality who these so-called ordinary persons were, jostling with each other to get a view of Nimai. These were great elevated demigods that had come. They knew this was a once-in-a-millennia opportunity. So as he's walking, Nimai Pandit, he approached one kadiwala, one cloth salesman, cloth merchant. He said, bring me out your finest samples. And merchant brought them out, and you know how it goes. You've all been to Ganga Prasads, and they unfold bolts and bolts of stuff. All I'm thinking is, oh my God, they got to fold all that back up. They're just throwing it out in front of you, one on top of the other, this one, that one, all fanned out. And so this cloth, and the merchant said, no, for you, I'm giving it for free. Nimai Pandit said, oh, you're giving it for free? That means it's not very good value, and not good quality. You're giving it away. You want to get rid of it. So you're giving me the poor quality stuff. I want the better quality stuff. No, the merchant said. This is the most valuable cloth, but I'm giving it to you in charity because you are a great brahmana. Nimai smiled. He accepted one very nice chadar, threw it over his shoulder, thanked the man, and went on his way, continually glancing back, throwing an auspicious glance at the man. You can imagine, Nimai Pandit's come to a shop, he's laid all these wares, Nimai's picked one, he's given it to him as a gift, and he's walking away, and the man's just, his heart and his eyes are just following Nimai Pandit down the row. And Nimai's occasionally going back. So sweet. Next he came to another shop. This was a dudwala. Dudwala means a cow herdman, milk. So he said to the dudwala, he said, bring me your best curds, your best milk, and your best yogurt. Just like when we do the Abhishek on this day, as a matter of fact, it's going on right this minute. We do the Abhishek in Alachua. Mother Ruchira and Adi Karta supply the milk and the yogurt from their own cows. Only the best. We don't have to buy store-bought milk. So it's very, very nice like that. So the cow herdsman brought them out before this most beautiful personality, Nimai Pandit, gave him a seat, and then kept referring to him as my maternal uncle. seeing him in that role. And there was exchanging some light joking words because of this connection and some teasing back and forth, and the cowherd man was bringing little samples of this and that and the other, yogurt, milk, curd, butter. Nimai Pandit enjoyed all of it, very, very happy, taking little bites and samples and pleasant exchange. And after eating completely to his satisfaction, at least for that moment, he then said, "Thank you very much," and continued on his way. Again, the Dudwala just watching as Nimai walked down there, just enchanted. So next he came to the Attarwala. Attar means perfumes, fragrance. Here, of course, the fine selection of oils and fragrances can be found. There's 2 such shops as this in Vrindavan. One is very well known for his very high quality and very expensive merchandise. So Nimai Pandit sat down at the shop and he said to the merchant, "Please bring me your finest perfumes." And there was some, joking words about it. And so the man brought them. And Nimai said to him, "So what is the price?" And the shopkeeper said, "My dear Panditji," said, "you know everything. You know what the price is that I'm charging. How can I even ask a price of you?" And Nimai Pandit said, No, I'm not going to take any cents from you for free. I'll just take a small sample." "Oh, all right, that's fine." And Nimai Pandit poured one entire bottle in his hand and rubbed it all over his body. And he walked away smiling. The shopkeeper looked as Nimai Pandit walked down the aisle. Of course, everyone else looked because his fragrance was going by. It's just, incredible. So next, he went to the Pulwala. Pulwala means the flower market. Finally, it's down to 1 page. There we go. Yeah. So he said to the flower merchant, he said, "Please bring me the best of garlands that you have, and don't tell me the price because I have no money." Right up front. There's no exchange going to happen here of, "I have nothing in my pockets, but bring your best product here." So the flower merchant said, No, my dear Brahmana, I am not giving to you. I am giving to you. I'm not going to charge you anything, so there's no need to discuss any kind of price. So he took his finest garland of the most fragrant flowers, and he placed it lovingly on the neck of Nimai Pandit. You can just imagine. He comes into the shop, sits down, man comes forward and puts a garland. Some of us may have had the opportunity to put a garland on Srila Prabhupada. Nimai Pandit looks at him with a vision filled with blessings. "Thank you." And then he leaves that shop. And again, the shopkeeper is watching as Nimai Pandit walks down the road. So next, Nimai Pandit came to the Panwala. Now, those of us that know the pastimes of Narottam Das Thakur know very well this business of the Panwala. And that's a very wonderful story in and of itself for another time and place. The Panwala, he looked upon the beautiful form of Mahaprabhu with the fine silken chadar and the most fragrant of garlands and, emanating this divine fragrance of scented oils, a form that would attract even Madan Mohan. And he took the dust from that Nimai Pandit and put it on his own head. And the Panwala said, "Oh, today I'm very, very fortunate." This is exactly how Vrindavan Das Thakur describes it. Not very fortunate, very, very. Very fortunate, okay, but I'm very, very fortunate. So this twice. "Oh, today I am very, very fortunate, for you have come to my shop and blessed me." And then he made up a special pond in a special leaf, which he folded over 4 times and then took a whole clove and pierced through the top to hold it together. Some of you may have had the opportunity to watch these Panwalas do their trade. It's really quite amazing. And then he gave it to Nimai. Nimai made a face like, "How much?" No price for you. This is my offering to you. You please take it. Nimai smiled, accepted it as his gift. The eternal devotee who is in the role of a Panwala. So Nimai Pandit left the man's shop. You all know what happened. The man looked lovingly as Nimai Pandit walked down the road. So next he went to the Shankawala. Shankawala means the conch shell. Finest. So he went up to him and he said, please bring me the most auspicious, deep-sounding conch shell you have. Deep sounding. Now this is very important. Sometimes we get these conch shells, you try to blow, it's like, I don't care if you're praying, kirtan, you're not blowing this conch shell. It's just not happening, And if it does happen, it's piercing to the ears. So Nimai Pandit knew, deep sounding conch shell. These are the good ones. Most of the temples, they've got a real big one on the altar. You can imagine, in the opening verses of Bhagavad Gita, it mentions all the different conch shells blew. What a sound that must have been. These were not tinny little conch shells. They were deep sounding conch shells. And they all had names. At any rate. So Nimai Pandit said, please bring me your finest, deep sounding conch shell that you have. And don't ask me for any money because I have no wealth. I'm a poor Brahmin. Dressed in gold and garlands and silks. And the man said, I will bring you. You pay me or not pay me as you like. I do not mind. I don't know about any of you. Years ago, I managed the gift shop in New York on Schermerhorn. And I would go regularly to India for shopping for the gift shop. I never had a single vendor say to me, you pay me or not as you like. They may have said, all right, I'll put it on credit and you'll pay me next time. But they never said, pay me or not. When Nimai Pandit came to the residence, to the shops of all these individuals, that was their mood. Yes, this is Nimai Pandit. What do I care for money? So Nimai Pandit accepted the most wonderful sounding deep conch shell. You could, So in this way, he passed through the entire town of Navadwip. Oh, when he left the man's shop, the man lovingly looked as Nimai walked down the road. So in this way, he had these kind of exchanges with all of the different servants. Now, this next one is very interesting. If I were Radhanath Maharaj, this is where I would go, shall I tell you? He's very expert at that. Shall I continue? Yes, for sure. So the next one was a well-known fortune teller. Very, very famous in Navadwip. Very expert Vaishnava. So he went in, and this fortune teller could tell past life, present life, future lives, everything. And the present condition of an individual just by his reciting of the mantra. I had one opportunity to visit a person of this type of nature in Vrindavan once, and first thing he did was say Achman and recite some mantra and go deep into a meditation. So this fortune teller is there, and Nimai Pandit said, I've heard that you're very expert at telling people about their past lives. Could you kindly tell me who I was in my past life? The poor man was set up for failure. So the fortune teller invited Nimai Pandit in. Yes, please come in. Gave him a very comfortable seat. Performed his Achman. And then he started to recite his personal Gopal mantra. And then suddenly, in his mind, appeared the four-armed form of Lord Narayana, carrying all four items, the conch shell, the disc, the lotus, the chakra. He had the lines of Lakshmi on his chest, that little hair there. He was wearing the Kaustubha jewel on a golden chain around his neck, and it was emanating great brightness. And then as the fortune teller went deeper into his meditation, he saw the birth in the prison of Kamsa with Vasudeva and Devaki standing there. And then he saw Vasudeva taking the child across the Jamuna to Gokul. And then he saw the small boy growing up in Gokul amongst all the cowherd people. And then he saw his two-handed form dressed only in some jewelry, stealing some butter in a darkened room, emanating the room with the light from his own body and jewels. And he saw, this is the same person as my Gopal that I worship. And he became very much amazed. And he came out of his meditation. I'm so sorry, excuse me. I don't know what transpired. Let me try again. He said his Achman, recited his Gopal mantra. And then the threefold bending form of Shamsundar appeared before him, surrounded by the gopis who each playing different instruments, venas, tampuras, all kinds of different musical instruments glorifying him. And then he saw more and more of Krishna's pastimes that took place there in Vrindavan 5,000 years ago. And he came out and he stopped and he prayed to his Gopal deity. Who is this wonderful Brahmana? What's going on here? I'm so sorry. Let me try again. Nimai Pandit, during all this time, is just sitting there. He knows what's going on. But he's just... meditates again in this way. And this time, he saw Lord Ramchandra sitting on his throne. He saw Vraha with the earth on the end of his tusk. He saw Vamadev blessing Bali Maharaj. He saw Nrsimha with Prahlad sitting on his lap. He saw Matsya. He saw Balaram. Then he saw Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra together. The visions that were coming like this, they had completely confused the fortune teller. I mean, he was at his wit's end. He had no idea what was going on. And he was just staring at this vision. But externally, he was simply sitting there with his mouth open with a stunned look. So Nimai Pandit interrupted. He said, "You, what are you doing? You're supposed to be some big fortune teller, and all you're doing is sitting there with some confused look on your face. Do you know anything or not?" Nimai is playing with him so much like this. And the fortune teller said, "Yeah, well, but please come back in the afternoon. I'm sorry. Something has come up I need to attend to. I'll chant my mantras again for you then." Nimai Pandit smiled. He said, "All right, very good. Very good. I'll come back later." So then he went to visit Sridhar Kulavesha. Mahaprabhu had a regular habit of going to Sridhar Kulavesha's house. Sridhar Kulavesha, if you've been to this place, he was a very poor Brahmin. He had a hut that didn't even have a proper roof. Sometimes when it would rain, he would have to put some buckets there or sit on that side of the room because it was dripping on this side of the room. The door was not even properly attached, and he would just have to set it there at night. And how did he support himself? He sold bananas in an area where everybody had 10 banana trees in their yard. So how much money can you make as a banana salesman in a forest of bananas? So this was his, so he was very poor like this, and very, very humble. And Mahaprabhu constantly would come and tease him. This was the nature of their relationship. Nimai Pandit would tease him. So this time Nimai Pandit says, "Sridhar, you're always chanting the names of Hari, 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 but you're always very unhappy. You're serving the husband of the goddess of fortune, yet you hardly have even a little rice and barely one piece of cloth to wear, and your shack is falling apart. What is that? How is that possible?" Sridhar said, "Whatever I get, whatever I don't get, it doesn't matter. It's all the Lord's grace." And Nimai Pandit says, "This place is so worn out." Someone comes to your home, right? You receive them. You know, you really got a ramshackle place here, don't you? Can't you do any better for yourself? So, this is the exchange there. He says, "This is so worn out, you can hardly manage anything. Just see, the worshippers of Durga, they are getting great opulence. She is blessing them with so much facility. They have plenty to eat. They have luxurious items in their homes." Sridhar Maharaj said, "A king, he may be living in a very splendid palace, and a bird is living in a simple tree. But the Supreme Lord takes care of both of them accordingly. So whether you're a king in some palatial situation, or you're just a bird going from one branch to the other, Everything's being orchestrated by the personality of Godhead. Sridar's telling like that. Mahaprabhu says, no, 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 no. I know you. You are keeping some wealth hidden in this home. You're showing yourself as a very poor man. But I know that you have some very, very special wealth, and you're therefore a very rich person. Otherwise, how is it possible that you could live day after day in this impoverished condition? Of course, we know Sridhar was the topmost of devotees and was living in any condition only by the dint of his devotional mood. So Sridhar said to him, all right, you take whatever you want, bananas, banana leaves, banana stalks, take whatever you want, and just leave me for now. I don't want any more arguments with you. Nimai Pandit said, no, I'm not going anywhere until you give me my fair share of your wealth. I know you plan to send me away empty-handed. Here, take a banana and go. Sridhar said, no, what wealth? I only sell banana leaves, banana stalks, and some mooli. He also sold mooli, radishes. He said, I have no wealth. You take whatever you want from me. I have nothing. So Nimai Pandit said, all right. So he took some bananas, he took some banana leaves, he took some radishes. Sridhar said, yes, take whatever you want. You come every day to my house and I will give you whatever I can spare from my small stock. But please, when you come, don't pick quarrels and fight with me. I'll give you something, but don't argue with me. Nimai Pandit said, yes, no more arguments, just bananas and radishes. So Sridhar also gave Nimai Pandit one special thing, which is a preparation made from milk and date sugar, Gaura, mixed together like this. So this was the exchange that Nimai Pandit would have with all these different personalities. Now at this time, this is the time period at which the great debate with the Digvijay takes place. We all know this story, but there's a couple of interesting dead mics in front of us. We really give these mics a run for their money. The batteries run out so fast. So we all know this story, the Digvijay, but Vrindavan Das Thakur gives us a couple of insights you may not be aware of. Digvijay was not his name. Digvijay was the title that was given to him. His name was Keshava Kashmiri, who was the Digvijay. So Keshava Kashmiri, the Digvijay. And he was the conquering scholar and debater, as we all know. He would go from place to place, have a debate. Once he finished, he would take some tithe, some dakshin, and then he would also take a certificate of defeat. Sign it. No, sign it. All right, he would put it in his bag. See, I have so many certificates of defeat. See what a big man I am? This was his false ego. He assumed his position and his activity in life was all in account of these papers he had. Banana leaves of signatures that I've defeated. Oh, see, look. Oh, you want to know? Here, look. Oh, you don't think? Look how many I've got. I had one gentleman I encountered when I was doing my work at my store, and he had a disagreement with me. He said, do you know how many followers I have on Instagram? I said, don't know, don't really care. I have 14,000 followers. I can say anything about you, it'll ruin you. Be my guest. So this was the Digvijay's mood. This Instagram mentality is not new. Digvijay had it. Do you know how many receipts I have in my bag that I've defeated? So his idea was he'll come to Navadwip, since it's famous as a place of education, teaching, learning, scholarship, and he'll conquer everyone in Navadwip also. Have to get a second bag. He'll conquer so many people. This is his mood. So, this would be just another check on his list. So, one reason to do this, of course, was to acquire extra wealth, extra fame. And as I mentioned, they had to pay the tax and give some tribute and all like that. So, in this way, Digvijay had amassed a great amount of wealth. Don't be misled. Digvijay was not walking from village to village. He was being carried on a very palatial palanquin by 4 carriers. He had enough wealth from his conquering to afford a nice palanquin and carriers to take him around. And, in this way, he entered Navadwip in this way, and word got around, Digvijay's here, Digvijay's here. Everyone was quite concerned. So he saw, when he entered, there was a large number of students sitting and listening to someone speak. So he noted that the speaker had very, very beautiful limbs and was decorated in radiant jewels and had just this magnificent tilak on his forehead and long, flowing black hair and a broad chest like a lion. This must be the famed Nimai Pandit I have heard of. So he asked one of the students in the back, he had the palanquin placed down, he got off the palanquin, asked one of the students in the back, he said, is this Nimai Pandit? The student looked to him like, of course it is. Who do you think it is? Yes, that's Nimai Pandit. So the Digvijay then does something that I'm quite sure most of us would find a little bit bold. He walks up into the front of the group and sits down right next to Nimai Pandit. Now you can imagine there's some type of a Bhagavatam discourse going on. Some celebrated sannyasis visiting the temple, and someone walks in, walks right up through the crowd of devotees, right up to the very front and sits down next to that person speaking. What? Even in an ordinary setting, this would be considered rude at the least. But we've already established that Digvijay is quite full of himself. Keshava Kashmiri did not possess humility in that bag of receipts of people he defeated. So at any rate, he sits down. Nimai Pandit is most accommodating and polite of personalities. He turns and smiles. He acknowledges him, greets him, offers some praise. Oh, the students, this is the Digvijay Keshava Kashmiri. He is a great debater. He is, he says a few polite words like that, And then he says, my dear Digvijay, could you kindly give some praise of Mother Ganga? So, as we all know, he worshipped his goddess Saraswati, and she began to dance on his tongue as 100 verses flowed like the wind coming out of his mouth. Nimai Pandit listened very attentively, and then he said, my dear poet, there is no one like you in the entire world. Your poetry can only be understood by you and Mother Saraswati. Yes. That's not a compliment in case you're not sure. Oh, such a wonderful presentation you did. Nobody but you and the music can understand. This was an insult to him. Nobody but you and Saraswati. Kind of a hidden jab at the Digvijay. But Digvijay was so proud, he missed the sarcasm. Yes, it is true. I do speak very wonderfully. So Nimai Pandit said, I would like a little explanation from you, if you don't mind. There's one particular verse. Could you give me the details of the qualities and explanation of this verse? And also tell me the faults that are in that verse. Keshava Kashmiri asked, well, what verse do you mean? And Nimai Pandit immediately recited the 100 verses he had just recited verbatim. He'd only heard them once. We call this a Shrutidar, someone who can hear something once and know it perfectly. So Nimai Pandit had heard the Keshava Kashmiri Digvijay recite these 100 verses one time. He said, well, and he recited all 100 of them. And then, of course, Keshava Kashmiri was incredibly amazed by it. He couldn't believe that he could recite these 100 verses like this perfect memory. And something happened that had never happened to Digvijay Keshava Kashmiri. He felt a little fear in his heart that he might get defeated. This was an unknown feeling to him, an unknown emotion. By hearing Mahaprabhu recite these 100 verses just like that, he thought, oh, I may be in deeper than I thought here. So he veiled his anxiety, and he correctly explained 5, and then Mahaprabhu said, the verse number such and such. So Keshava Kashmiri explained the 5 merits of that particular verse. So that's very good. Thank you very much. Now, Could you explain the faults of that verse as well? Kesava Kashmiri raised his chest, put his arm, and boastfully said, faults? There are no faults in my verse. What do you mean faults? So Mahaprabhu said, well, if I may, Nimai Pandit said, if I may, and he explained the 5 faults that were present in the verse. So Chaitanya Charitamrita notes 5, Chaitanya Bhagavat notes 3. Either way, there was a couple of faults that got pointed out that Kesava Kashmiri just didn't think were there. Excuse me. So, it's a very important point that's made here is that he was so proud he didn't think there was any possibility of there being any fault. But Nimai Pandit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, clearly pointed him out to him. So, Digvijay Kesava Kashmiri was completely embarrassed. He realized, I've just been defeated. This has never happened. And in a very dejected mood, he rises with his head down, gets up very slowly with his shoulders slumped, and he begins to leave. Now, what happens next is extremely instructive. As he begins to leave, all of Mahaprabhu's students start to laugh at him. That Digvijay, he thought he could... And they start teasing him. And Mahaprabhu looks at them, he says, no, stop that. Mahaprabhu had no desire to embarrass Digvijay Kesava Kashmiri. His only purpose was to defeat his arrogance. He was a senior. He didn't want him embarrassed publicly and to feel so badly. So we can learn a very important lesson from this. We may be in a senior position. We may have responsibilities to instruct or guide others. I was just talking with some friends this morning trying to discuss raising children and how to chastise them when they need it and punish them, but at the same time respect them as who knows what wonderful devotees that have taken birth in the womb of these Vaishnavas. So this was a conversation going on. We have to understand how to do it with compassion and soberness and with humility. The teacher's duty is to instruct the student. How the teacher instructs the student, how the parent guides the child, is the important part of it. Anyone can tell somebody what to do. That doesn't take much. Being able to do it in a mood of humility and compassion that brings out a desire from that person to want to do it, that's a whole other secret. So in any way, Nimai Pandit, he says to Digvijay Kesava Kashmiri, he says, you go back home and, we can meet again at a later time. So the Digvijay, he goes back to where he's staying, in this little ashram he's in. He performs his puja to Saraswati, and he pleads with Mother Saraswati, you've never let me down before. You've always given me victory. How is this possible? You've let me down this time. He's so sincere. Mother Saraswati appears and speaks to him. She says, you do not know who you're speaking with. This Nimai Pandit is my own Lord. How can I manifest in you the ability to defeat him when he's my own Lord? Better, you should go and surrender to him, and that will be to your benefit. That is my instruction to you. So thereafter, Digvijay Kesava Kashmiri went to Nimai Pandit, prostrated himself at his lotus feet, and shared with him his vision with Mother Saraswati. And Nimai Pandit told him, he said, this is very nice. Don't share this with anyone. There are several things in Shastra where amazing things. There's the time at Vaitacharya appeared to the Brahmin who was a fault finder in Mathura, such strong. And then he said, don't share this with anyone. Yet we find all these things in Shastra for our benefit. So at any rate, he told him, he said, this is wonderful. So the entire mood of Digvijay changed. He became completely absorbed and attracted to the process of devotional service. He developed great attachment to the personality of Godhead, Nimai Pandit. And he developed a true understanding of who Nimai Pandit actually was. And what was interesting, he became so humble. He gave away all of his wealth in charity. Elephants, palanquins. Some of you may have one or two cars. He had more than one or two palanquins. Riches, other valuables, everything he had collected in his debating, as the prostitute had done when instructed by Haridas Thakur, gave all that away because it was tainted. Why did the prostitute have to give everything up? Because all of those means that she had were from inauspicious activity. Everything that Digvijay had was from this pride and arrogance of conquering everyone. So he gave all that up. And he became a very simple mendicant there residing in the town of Navadwip. So after this, Nimai Pandit got a new name, Avadi Singha, one who destroys all isms just like a lion. Avadi Singha. There's a name we can give to Mars. So Vrindavan Das Thakur says, this is a very important point. Vrindavan Das Thakur says that one who hears about these exploits of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his feats in this conquering of the Digvijay, even if that person is foolish or uneducated, they will gain the highest knowledge, which is love of God. So we're all benefited. So I'd like to close with one additional story here. It's Nimai Pandit was not without his humor. He wasn't just, always One time he decided to take a little tour, as pundits would do, lecturing and speaking and taking students and instructing them and all like that. So he went to many places, and he went in some of his travels to East Bengal. Excuse me. And of course, while he was there, he taught, he acquired additional riches. This was part of what it was. And he was very successful in this effort. Now, interesting thing is, the East Bengalis have a particular way of speaking, a dialect, if you will, that's different than the Navadwip Bengalis. Kind of like, if you know people from Boston, they say ka and pak, Yeah. Bostonians. Or if you live up north and you hear the Southerners, y'all. So Nimai Pandit heard this, and he thought it was quite funny. And he would cause great laughter amongst his students imitating this type of dialect of these East Bengalis. They'd be sitting around, and he'd start speaking in that dialect, and very exaggeratedly, of course, and laughing, and all the students would laugh, and they'd just be having a great time. So this was one of the other things that Nimai Pandit acquired while he was there in West Bengal, doing his debating and all. So he returned back home, and when he returned home, he got a great grand reception, and he took all the gifts he had received and all the wealth and deposited it in the home with Mother Sachi. And there were, it was a big party. It was a welcome back party. There was a lot of food, a lot of guests, a lot of fun and activity. And Nimai Pandit would entertain the guests in his home by imitating these East Bengalis. Oh, while I was there, and everybody'd have a big laugh and all like that, and everybody just thought it was the funniest thing, So one of the elderly guests that was there, he came and he said, Nimai, he said, your father's ancestors are from Shailet. And that's the area that you're making fun of. This is not very nice of you to do. From that day forward, Nimai Pandit never made that joking imitation again, out of respect for the place of his father's heritage. So, it's only one more story. So one day, a very nice lesson for those of us who are householders was given by Nimai Pandit in his Grihastha Lila with Lakshmi Devi. And because he was such a celebrated Pandit, learned scholar and teacher in Navadwip, many, many people would come and visit him. They would give gifts and valuable foodstuffs and, special things like that. So Nimai Pandit didn't just keep all this wealth. He wasn't, as Prabhupada would say, a miserly person. Just as later in his year, he would plunder the storehouse of love of Godhead and give that to everyone. Similarly, he shared his wealth. He would give, to the poor people, to the unfortunate people. He was very generous in this way. And his home, it was always open to guests. Sometimes you want to see someone, but you're not sure. Like, my daughter lives in Australia, so I want to Skype with her quite often, so I try to call, but she's got 2 toddlers, a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old. So I know her time's not hers. So sometimes I'll call, and if the phone rings 3 or 4 times, she doesn't pick up, I hang up because I know she's a little preoccupied. Nimai Pandit's home was always open. Any guest that would come, they would always find him there. So one day, 20 sannyasis appeared at the front door. There's a group of sannyasis that were traveling. They had come through Navadwip and they'd heard of Nimai Pandit. So they appeared. Nimai Pandit invited them in and said, please come in. We'll give you some prasadam. Now, those of you that are married men, I don't know if you've ever showed up at night for dinner with some guests and didn't tell your wife in advance. It doesn't go too well. I speak from experience. So at any rate, Nimai Pandit said, yes, come in, we'll give you some prasadam. And Mother Sachi says, Nimai, there's nothing in the house. We've finished all the day's bhoga. The kitchen is completely bare. Nimai Pandit said, Mother, are you sure? We all know where this is going, right? So Nimai Pandit said, are you sure, Mother? Yes, Mother Sachi said, the kitchen is completely bare. All the day's bhoga is finished. You maybe just go in the kitchen and check again. So Sachi Mata went to the kitchen and she was shocked. She went in the kitchen. It was filled with all types of bhoga for making all types of preparations. So she and Lakshmi Devi immediately began preparing food for these 20 sannyasis. The sannyasis were very, very satisfied. Nimai Pandit gave them all gifts and charity, and they all went on their way very happy. Oh, Nimai Pandit, such a nice prasad we had there. What did you get? Oh, I got a nice chutney. Oh, I got a very nice dough, So in this way, Nimai Pandit shows that guests should always be taken care of. And that one should not hoard one's wealth, but one should share it as one is able to. Service to guests, especially those that are unexpected, is the root activity of the householders. This we should understand. A householder who does not feed guests, who does not feed Brahmins, who does not welcome sannyasis into their home, is considered just to be like the animals and birds of a lower species that live in the forest. That's quite something we should keep in mind. Those of us in the Grihastha ashram, and those who may be transitioning or maybe not, that receiving the guests in our home and properly taking care of them is the foundational principle. Because such service that is not done gives great difficulty. But when one does perform the service, it causes a loss of the propensity of cheating, and it removes insincere, untruthful behavior. Now, any of us that have those qualities in our dirty hearts, receiving guests in our home, giving them nice prasadam, this is a way to remove that. Removes the propensity for cheating and the insincere, untruthful behavior one may have. So, of course, those sannyasis were greatly, greatly fortunate. Actually, many of those sannyasis were demigods. They would take their appearance on this earth in many different types of disguises and come to Lakshmi Devi. Brahma, Shiva, Sukadev Goswami, Vyas, it said that they all came in disguises just to receive prasadam from the hand of Lakshmi Devi and Nimai Pandit. So, maybe if you get a reputation for serving nicely, some demigods will desire to come to your home and take prasadam. You might have Lord Brahma there one day. Anyway, so all of these pastimes of Nimai Pandit, they're there not only for our benefit, for our pleasure, and for our enjoyment, but they're there because they're instructive. They are there to give us examples, particularly at this point of his life, which most of us can relate to, of how we can advance in the devotional principles, how we can embrace a mood of service to others, and how properly to deal with others, not embarrassing others who we may have a superior position over, not being miserly and hoarding all of our wealth. All of these different instructions in the pastimes of Nimai Pandit are there to benefit us. So these are just some nice examples that we can embrace. A day like today, where the activity of eating is reduced greatly, we can spend so much extra time here in classes. We have a class by Kavichanda Swami coming up, a class by Naduna Swami coming up, we have a class by Bodhihari coming up, we have kirtans by so many people coming up, and we have this wonderful Abhishek in the evening, fully able to absorb ourselves in these pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and get his mercy on this day. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu Ke Jai.